Yeah, I love the ocean. See, like, I don't know, fish don't really freak.
Yeah.
And Matt on the beats.
Matt. What's up, Matt?
I'm on the beats.
Sipping that walk round from the flash. Feel the red. In the studio, we dropping heat. Blowing speakers from Rob's basement to the
Rob's basement.
True leaders get back. South County, we putting you on the map. Copia's representing, we don't mess around. We bringing that fire, making heads spin around. Cash flowing in, we living the dream. Stacking paper, making it all.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 8 of Culture Copia Podcast. In this episode, we're going to visit AI. We have a special guest right now. My wife, Tori Thompson.
Woo!
In the house, the one and only.
Hello.
And, yeah, so, you know, we kind of covered this. Was this in our first season or second season?
Second season, we did a bonus episode.
I think that was when we brought Nate on, wasn't it, Nate?
That was
Nate, weren't you here for the AI episode?
That was Nate's first appearance.
I think that was Nate's first
cameo.
appearance.
Yep, he was a guest host and was like, "This was really dope. I want to hang out with you guys and do this." And we were like, "Absolutely." But yeah, it was just kind of like a bonus episode, little, like, I think maybe a 30-minute.
It wasn't very long.
So we're gonna go into a little more detail this time around. And of course, we mentioned last week Greg is not here. He ran away screaming
To go swimming.
He's doing something. In or near the water. We know that much.
Yeah.
So the song that you guys just heard was actually written by AI. And Nate, you want to give us a little insight into how that came about?
Well, all right. So there's a service out there. It's called Suno. And it's one of these services where you can type in some lyrics. You can type in a type of music. And then through the magic of whatever machine learning they've got, they turn that into a track. And so that song right there you just heard, I wrote some lyrics for it and then specified that I wanted like a trap beat that was kind of triumphant. And then I sprinkled in a lot of tropes about hanging out in the studio down here. And that's what you get at the other side of this one. So you get the choice to give it exactly the lyrics you want, or you can hit a button to generate some lyrics. And so that's pretty much it. That's the whole pattern of how these work. And man, the scope in which they can produce music is just...
It's crazy.
I've never seen something like this.
Yeah. So we brought Tori on board for this because she's currently working for a company where she she's basically training. You're training AI,
Yeah,
right?
That's what it's called.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. But, Nate, I'm going to come back to you. Why don't you give us a quick synopsis? Because I think a lot of people, when they hear AI, they think of Terminator and they think of Skynet and they think of all this negative, connotations that come along with AI. Failing to realize that we've used a version of AI for years. Siri is one of the first ones that kind of comes to mind.
Yeah.
So can you kind of start us off with kind of how AI kind of started coming around and we started using it and kind of get us to where we're at today?
I mean, modern AI is... there's always been versions of this, like computer intelligence, that have just been... it's simulation essentially. So until the modern era of compute, like when video cards were invented, AI could start to begin. Because before, computers just weren't fast enough to do real AI. To crunch that much data it's too much. But it turns out these video cards that were really good for playing video games were also really good at doing machine learning and crunching tons and tons of math. And the people over at NVIDIA figured this out pretty early on. They're like, okay, not only are our cards good for video games, not only can they mine Bitcoin and currency, they can do machine learning. And that was something they knew probably 2017, 2016, laying the foundation for that. But the industry itself didn't really recognize it at first. Until, I'd say the biggest flag was OpenAI came out with ChatGPT. And when that came out, that hit the news, and people were able to get in and use this in a very concrete, like, oh, this is helpful for me today kind of way. And that kind of, in my opinion, is ushering in this modern era of AI that we're seeing now.
ChatGPT kind of revolutionized AI for me. Full disclosure, I use ChatGPT to write our episode descriptions because I just don't have the time to sit there and write 4 or 5 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I just, with everything with the podcast and all that, like I just don't have time. Another thing that Tori's background is in education.
Yes.
And
languages.
And languages. Yeah. So I was in school, it was last year, and I had a final coming up.
Yeah.
And, I'm not the best at time management, I'll admit. Okay. And I got into a crunch time where I had to write a report for my final. So I used ChatGPT to compare 2 art styles, right? And I knew enough about the subject to, know if it was bullshitting me or not. I didn't have time to write a 2 or 3 page report.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna name his name,
Shame.
but I know.
Shame.
And dude, she was kind of fucking pissed at me because I told her I was like, I use ChatGPT. Just to let you know, I got an A on the paper. Okay,
No, you didn't.
I swear to God, I got a fucking A on. No, I got an A and some extra credit because I actually went down to I got extra credit because I went down to the art museum and viewed some Toulouse-Lautrec artwork.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but you didn't get an A.
Oh, okay.
ChatGPT got an A.
Okay, fair. That's fair. And I think that's where kind of Tori was kind of, I could tell she was not happy about it because, her being a teacher and being in education and shit, she was like, you fucking cheated. And I'm like, kinda.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
That's 100% cheating if you use it to write your entire paper.
Well, it was just everything but the last paragraph.
Yeah. Then.
Let's play devil's advocate for a minute. At what line do these tools become cheating and what line do they become tools? Because let's take like the example of the calculator, and I go to my accountant or something, and they decide to keep it real and break out the abacus and slide the things over, and it takes them 5 years to do my taxes, and they F it up.
Yeah.
Would I be like, why aren't you using a calculator?
Yeah.
Is that cheating at that point?
Yeah, but numbers suck.
They might suck.
I don't think using a calculator for equations is cheating per se.
That's not why you hired an accountant. You can add 2 + 2.
Sure, absolutely
Right.
can.
But you don't understand it, whether it's the tax code or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I would want an accountant who had an understanding of the tax code and didn't have to chat GPT and reference that. So.
Yeah, there it is.
And they're already developing tools to check students' papers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always been plagiarism tools, even.
And I'll be honest, my instructor was pretty fucking sharp too. Like, he gave me a pass on it, but I had written papers prior to that myself.
Yeah.
Fully written them, my own. And
okay, good for you.
Yeah, I didn't. It was just on the last one because I ran out of time. But I'm pretty certain he knew that I may not have written it, but he gave me some leeway on it. I think he gave me some leeway on it, but.
Well, you went to the art museum.
I did. I went. I took it a step up, and went down there, and I got like 20 points extra credit for it.
This is where I have a problem, and it becomes that question, Nate, of like when does it become cheating? When is it just a tool? Let's use that example. You went to the art museum. You took in those pieces of art, dude. Imagine if that person just did I don't know. It's to me when you take the human element out of it. I don't know. I don't even know how to articulate what I want to say right now.
It can't have experiences.
It's correct. Yes, AI does not have. There's just something about that personal touch that. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably the wrong person to even be talking about this because in some ways, I mean, yes, there's a lot of technology that has positively impacted my life and all of our lives. There's a lot of practical uses for it. But then, like, sometimes, dude, I'm just, like, kind of old school and, like, I don't even like using, like, a credit card or, like, a debit card instead of, like, cash. Let alone, like, you brought up, like, Bitcoin and things like that. Like, fuck no, dude. I'm never digitizing my money. That's ridiculous.
What?
I just can't.
You want to carry around crumpled up pieces of paper? That's your strategy for cash?
No, you know what it is? Honestly, it all has to do with... for me, like when it comes to the cash thing, and that's kind of a tangent, but at the same time, it's that never loses its value. And it never.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that.
Well, let me put it to you this way. Transactionally, if you own a shop and I give you $5 in cash, you have that $5. And if you take that $5 and you spend it on something to stock your shop, like something on your shelves, you give that company $5 and then they have $5. If I take that, if we do the same transaction and I use a debit card or credit card, you have to then pay to process through the bank.
Yeah, okay. On that note,
So
okay, I'll agree with you on that part. But
you lost money. And then whenever you take that money and you spend it on something else, that company then has to pay a processing fee.
correct.
And each transaction, that $5 becomes worth less and less and less.
The thing that's interesting about that, okay, so
I mean, am I wrong? No, am I wrong
Well,
about that?
Okay, I think you're right about what happens to the value. When you get paid, we'll say it's an invoice for $100, and you process it through a credit card, you're going to lose maybe 2.5% on that transaction to a credit card transaction.
Yeah, I want to lose 0%.
But what I'm getting at is this, like, if you start to scale out and you're taking several transactions and everybody's paying you with cash and you've got to reconcile all this at the end of the day, at what point does it become actually more profitable to just digitize all this so you don't have to, like, sit there and manually do your books later? So you're actually, like, you are spending more in the transaction, but you're buying time and you're buying convenience in that case, which might actually outset the cost of processing manual transactions.
Sure, absolutely.
So it's like, I guess it just depends on how you want to do business, really.
Yeah. Well, and when you're thinking of it from that point of view, absolutely. When I'm thinking of it from my point of view, I don't know. I'm just one person and coming from that side, I don't know.
So getting back to the main question that you asked, really, Nate, when it becomes a tool, like especially for you in IT, you have it write some code for you, right? And it can do it so much faster.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, my job now has changed substantially with AI tools because, I've been programming. Well, I've been in IT for 20 years at this point. So trust me, I've done it manually for plenty of time.
Yeah.
But at this point now, even if I want to do it manually, the speed at which these machines move, it's just so fast. It's almost like, it reminds me of the story of John Henry and the railroad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, to try to keep up with the steam engine coming that's laying these tracks down, it's so fast you burn out trying to compete with it.
Yeah, but he did it.
He also died.
Well, we all die.
He died doing it, though, man.
His heart exploded, man. I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, he's not trying to fucking get carpal tunnel here,
Actually, that's a very good point. Carpal tunnel. My precursors of carpal tunnel have gone way down. I have to type way less. It's fantastic from that perspective. But the flip side of it, though, I guess to be the devil's advocate of the devil's advocate is, do you learn it as thoroughly if you program in this way? And because my buddy, you all know Bose here. Bose has been learning how to program, and he's gone from learning with us when we were doing game development to going to school to doing it. And when he uses these technologies, he tells it to not give him all the answers. He tells it to treat me like I'm a student so I can learn this process.
That's interesting.
Yeah, right.
We need to get him on an episode too. That'd be a great host.
Yeah,
but you have to have that mindset in order to do that. And I think the problem becomes a lot of people don't have that mindset, and they think, ooh, quick answer.
Yeah.
I can just get it. But like you said, they're not learning it the same way.
I say it depends what your goals are, right? Like, are you trying to better yourself from an educational standpoint? Or are you trying to produce a product? I think it's a technology that can go either direction. It's really what you want to do with it, more so than it's like made to do one thing or the other. In my particular case, I'm more interested in production a lot of the time. I'm trying to produce stuff. And so I look at it like, okay, there's learning opportunities here, but sometimes I'll gloss over certain learning opportunities to just get to the production side of it with the technology. And I'm sure that's the big fear when I talk to people about it, is that we're going to turn into like the society of just, we produce everything, we know how to do nothing, the computers know everything, we're out of original thought now because we don't think anymore. But I just haven't found that to be the case so far with using it. I find my brain and my imagination continue to get wider as I use this stuff, more so than like a contraction of creative thought.
Well, back to me using it to help me pass a fucking report. I had to know enough about the subject to know that with the information it was giving me was accurate and correct, right? So like Tori's over here
giving
like
him looks.
she just keeps giving me looks.
Video,
But at the end of the day, I mean, it can go on a tangent. And Tori, maybe you can get into a little bit about this. Like, it does hallucinate. AI can hallucinate.
Oh, 100%.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, what I work with, they are large language models. And unlike Nate, I don't have a background at all in IT. My background is, like Rob said, teaching, writing. And so one of the key things that we look for, and the prompt can be literally anything someone would want to ask an AI. And you have to check and see if it's correct, because it's pulling its knowledge from the base it was giving, and the internet is not infallible as much as some people would like it to be. So you have to make sure that it's unbiased, it's using the correct type of language, and that it's giving you facts. And that's, I think, kind of what Matt was saying. The human element is important because of how things can be interpreted. You get that, like learning second languages and that sort of thing, and learning the intricacies of that. So, but to the point of you using that essay,
almost get away.
Yeah, no, you're not getting away with this. The whole point of that exercise is to prove that you understand the material.
Yes.
And the best way to prove you understand material, just as I'm doing right now, is trying to explain it to someone else, right?
Right.
And so if you're using the AI to write it, you can check it, right? And there's tasks I skip all the time because I don't have the coding experience. There's like how-to things. I don't know how to do this. I'll skip cooking things even because I don't cook, right? And it's not my area of expertise, but there are certain things that I am really good at, and that's what I can analyze and say, all of this is correct. This is how it can be improved. For example, even writing quality of it. Is this repetitious? It's basically just to give the most ideal answer that you can that's going to be helpful and accurate and sound human-like, but remembering it's not actually a human giving you the answer.
So there again, I'm not going to defend myself. What I did was not really on the level.
But the whole ethical, philosophical questions behind it are super interesting.
If I would have written that thing, because I'd read every other paper leading up to that, time management is a struggle for me, and like I ran out of time and I needed to get it done. But I knew enough of the subject that I could have written it. I could have written it as well, but I would have had to have done my research.
Yeah.
And gone through my notes.
That's the point of the
exactly.
But if I had time, you know what I'm saying? And by the way, I'm working full time and going to school full time. So
my thought on this is school sometimes gives these superfluous activities. That's what I think too. Is the nature of school is also to be called into question here, like. Because you're doing these simulations in school to try to like get ready for the real world. What real world are you walking into now? And for better or worse, you're walking into one where you can ask a computer to generate you a whole entire paragraph or something. Like where do we land on spell check these days? Is that okay? I hope it is, because I rely on that heavily. I can't even articulate.
I mean, that's an interesting, because that's technically AI, is it not?
I mean,
it is.
Yeah,
it's all predictive.
Machine intelligence.
Yeah.
I think So,
I mean, if you're going to be a writing major, I'd say you might have some trouble.
Yeah, so that was the thing. Yeah, this was for like it was
you couldn't do that in the
history of graphic communications. You know, so it was compare two different art styles. Why are they different? Why are they alike?
Yeah,
and how do we see it in today's society? Kind of.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I talk a lot. You have your time. Trust me.
So for me, coming from a liberal arts background, I feel like no knowledge is ever wasted. And so it's for the writing piece, it's learning how to express yourself. So even if you never need to write, a paper again in your life, you're learning how to present your ideas to an audience for them to understand it. Correct.
Yes.
And so that's what points I would make with my students when it was like, I was teaching statistics at one point somehow. And I was like, I don't care if you remember these formulas ever. We'll go through like the math. That's another form of critical thinking and beneficial. But for me, what I want you to get out of this is how to analyze a survey. If you read something online and they say 80% of people had this opinion, I want you to be able to look at the little n for the sample size.
Yeah.
Is this valuable information? Is it biased information?
Mm-hmm.
So
we got to bring up on this topic too, because while we're on it, Tori's sister is she's a teacher technically
she teaches a university class.
In university class in Indiana, and she was doing art, and she had a student submit a paper.
Ooh.
And like I said, they have tools they can run it through at this point.
But yeah, her tool, Katie's tool, is Tori.
And in part, she wanted a second opinion, I think.
And what did you conclude?
That it was likely AI.
And why did you come to that conclusion?
It's a little harder to say because I didn't know the student and know their past writing. But given the context that it was a kind of introductory art class at a tech school, so most kids probably aren't majoring in the humanities, right?
Mm-hmm.
The level of writing was fairly elevated, but also there's a certain cadence, almost roboticness to it. If you've read enough of it, I couldn't say like 100%, every time, but they like to like pair adjectives, so it's never just one adjective. It'll be this and this and this. And there are certain turns of phrases that I, as a fairly decent writer, would not have said or come up with. And so it's like for a freshman student,
they pulled the thesaurus out of their ass from this one, and you're like, what the fuck?
Well, that usually when they do that, then they're using the words wrong, which, that happens too. But it's just a combination of factors.
So while we've got your attention on you, why don't you explain?
My favorite thing.
Yeah, I know. She's like,
thank you for doing this, Tori.
Yeah. By the way, I love you. Yeah.
Give me some ice cream later.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've got some Ben and Jerry's up there, by the way. I don't know if you forgot about that or not.
God damn it, dude. We don't get ice cream either. The fucking... Dude, the favoritism is ridiculous.
Why don't you explain a little bit about what you've been doing? And you've been doing this
I started
about a year now. Or
not quite.
Not quite a year.
I started in October as a side gig.
It's been since October?
Yeah.
Why does it feel so much longer now?
Because time is a concept.
We could get 100%. Into a whole thing about
Yeah.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I started in October just as like a gig to kind of make extra money. I wanted something flexible that I could do when I wanted, as much as I wanted. And I'm kind of interested in how it works a little bit too, just because it's not going to go away. And I was curious to see what was behind it. But yeah, so it started out as a lot of just like using a rubric to analyze like a prompt with 2 responses. Which one of these is better? And then rating it and then explaining in a few sentences why. So there's a lot of justification behind what you're thinking. And since then I've kind of leveled up to where I'm doing a lot of work with images in terms of the bots being asked to like explain what's in an image, or relationally what's happening in this image, or analyze this infographic, and
Yeah.
So
did you get a dick pic in one?
Yes, that is a danger of the job. And so you do, when you signed up, they did ask you if you were okay with like not safe for work prompts. And I told them I am, because whatever, I'm not.
Dude,
phased.
There's not a whole lot that offends you. That's why one of the reasons why I married you.
There's
You
stuff
put it
that
with my
like
fucking
offends
ass.
me, but not in this
like
context,
that. Yeah.
right?
Well,
like,
if you see
don't be
that,
a
you're
dick,
just like,
but-
oh, all right.
Oh,
yeah,
look at
if you
that
guys
little
wanna
feller.
know, if you want to know the details, I can make y'all real uncomfortable.
Yeah, no,
Like,
we want details. We want all
Okay,
of it.
you've known me long enough to know I don't get uncomfortable. So.
Oh no, it's not that it's uncomfortable. It's the thought of it that's it was a penis with a festering sore on it, basically.
Nice.
But anyway, what I was saying is that
No. I want to know about this festering penis.
yeah, you want to know about this?
Yeah. So
I
what were they
forget-
asking?
I
Were they
forget what the
asking like, is this
prompt was,
dangerous?
If it
or-
was like, what's wrong with me, or should I see a doctor?
Do
or
they know
something?
that it's
That
not
is a great
WebMD?
Somebody
Well,
whipping the
that's
phone
part
out,
of
pulling the
it.
drawers.
Okay.
Is
click.
what you're training it to not. They can give like common sense medical advice, like I have a cold. What are some things I can do? And it can say this, but at the
Call
end
your
it should
doctor.
always say, talk to a medical professional, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's one of the safety things, along with like legal advice and financial advice. It's not supposed to tell you what stocks to invest in either.
Yeah,
So it's a
that's,
similar.
Good.
It's kind of the same. Like it's a similar program to like what they use on like WebMD, where you can take a picture like that upload it and say, hey, what is this? And like,
So
do they use something like that for WebMD? I don't know.
You upload these dick
WebMD is
pics to
mostly just
WebMD.
you Google your symptoms and then tells you you're dying.
Is it? Okay, I don't
Like a public forum.
listen. I don't even go to the doctor, so I definitely don't ask the internet what's wrong with me. I know what's wrong with me. If my head hurts, my head hurts. I take an ibuprofen and I lay down. Like I don't like. I'm not.
I tell you what,
know.
some of these things that were at the end, as Tori mentioned, it will say like, but consult your lawyer, but consult your accountant, but consult your doctor.
Yeah.
The irony though is some of the information coming out of it is actually like extremely good, and then they'll post it at the end there, but ask your doctor, and then you go to the doctor and you ask them, they're like, oh shit, hold on, let me check this out, and then they hit fucking ChatGPT and they're typing it in and they're going on the internet and researching, because I don't know if you guys have known people in the medical profession. I've known a lot of them, and guess what? They love Google. But they've got the context and the training
education
to know
and
how to
training.
interpret all that
Right,
information. So it is important to keep in mind that even though you can pull out like maybe super intelligence from these systems, are you in a position to wield it properly?
So that's where the fear comes in that you talked about. And I'm not saying I agree with it, but I guess I'm posing more of a question of like, as this stuff gets more advanced and more popular, are we going to continue to have people, like you said, in your personal experience and mine and yours, everyone here, like, we know well enough, okay, I'll go on a tangent here for a second. Me personally, I am a lazy person by nature. Had this stuff been around when I was in high school, I probably would have used that shit to write my papers and stuff. Now, that doesn't mean... That doesn't mean that I'm not an intelligent person, and I've actually found that you're not going to like where I'm going with it.
No, go ahead.
Because I have found
The
that
bus.
when I take those shortcuts, I don't get as good of results as when I put in the actual work. And that's in anything in my life. Writing a paper, tasks I do at work, whatever it is, I've done the shortcuts, and usually I have to learn that lesson the hard way, where I'm like, oh man, that really wasn't as good, and I didn't get as good of results because I took these shortcuts. And putting in the effort and doing it myself really is what helps me excel at whatever it is I'm trying to do. Now, I think the fear is, as these programs and all of this stuff, again, like I said, becomes more popular, advances, are we still going to have that same mentality of like, are we still going to have those people who want to excel and do it on their own, or is it just going to become a way for them to be like, okay, I can just use this program?
No, Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of my favorite people of all times.
Yeah.
And he was saying that you will still, in the education realm of using AI, you are still going to have to learn it. And it's like, well, how do you test it? Oration. Right. So you're going to have to go up.
Sorry, was that oration?
Oration. So
Okay.
like go up and like give an oral report, right, on the particular topic.
That's a good
and
idea.
that's how you get around that. Now, there again, I am not defending myself by using this. I was already getting an A in the class. Okay. Like it wasn't like I was on the verge of failing and I used this and then it bumped me up to passing. I was already excelling in the class. I
This
just
episode
ran
is
out.
turning
This is
into
a
Rob's
domestic-
justification of why
Yeah,
he
right.
needs to,
So what you're saying, and what Neil deGrasse Tyson is saying, and I guess it makes sense, is that educators and educational systems in general will have to adjust.
They will have to
Hell
adjust.
yeah, they're going to have to
Yeah,
adjust. This is a
and-
quantum leap.
Yeah, and because you're gonna have to know, like I was saying,
Thanks, Ziggy.
I knew enough about the subject matter to know. I mean, AI is pulling. Tori, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's pulling from like the internet, right? And we know that you can't really trust everything you read on the internet. Okay, so I knew enough of the subject to know that it was giving me correct information. I just used it to put its thoughts into my words, kind of thing.
Look, I
Okay.
feel like we're looking at a different way of like operating in the world with this kind of technology. We're not going to run out of problems, guys. We're still going to have plenty of space to innovate on top of. These tools are fast forwarding
Yeah.
certain situations. Like I say, I use it for programming. I still get stuck. Now it's
Yeah.
like accelerating certain parts of it, but the challenge is still there. The growth opportunity is still there. But
Because you have to know.
you gotta know, but it's almost like, take for example, like, do we want to go back to washing dishes by hand? So like someone can go down to the river and do laundry, and it's like, we're going to accelerate certain things, but then we're going to start, that'll be the new platform from, okay, how do we grow off of this platform? Now that we can fast forward this process, now what do we spend our time on?
Yeah.
At least in my line of work, I'm always out of time. Like, I'm always going against the clock. I've always got a zillion things to do, so I'm always looking for efficiencies. But I find even when I fast forward those, I'm not just like, well, I'm going to kick up my feet and I'm done. The computer did my work today.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess eventually, but currently it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
There's like this opportunity for growth that's still there.
It's the same thing that happens with any like big leap forward in technology with like the Industrial Revolution. There was some great things in terms of supplying larger, populations of people with things that they needed, and then terrible things like sweatshops and exploitation that went around with it.
Yeah.
So there's always the ethical questions that are going to surround it. But I think the difference here is with the advent of the internet, you have people, vast majority, or a lot of people who have access to facts, right? You can Google, now we can just ask Google anything. We don't have to wonder, who was that I saw in that movie? And then think of it a week later or something, But you still need like the critical thinking, the context, and the people like Nate who can work through it and put it together and make it work. Like I could go Google some coding language and learn some basics, but I wouldn't be an expert.
I think going forward with it too, I think you're still going to have the education in place where you're going to have to know this stuff inside and out. But once you get through that educational process or through that educational program, you're going to be able to lean on AI to make your productivity even more efficient. And I think that's kind of where, especially on the IT side, would you agree with that?
I agree with that. I think we're becoming more like DJs these days. It's like the work of, to use a music analogy, the work of playing the guitar, which, I mean, we can get into how, a ton of people are going to hate this, but you could, compose a guitar, but you got a couple things still. You got to have taste to know it even sounds good. Could be terrible music, but if you have no taste, you're going to produce some garbage and be like, this is great. And the second is being able to put it together, being able to compose things. These systems don't always spit out a finished product. So it seems like a lot of the times the composition and knowing how to take these pieces and put them together is kind of what we're moving towards when I look at these services.
Yeah.
Like writing, for example, I couldn't put something together that Tori could write. I could generate a ton of stuff, and it might, I might think it sounds good, and she's going to read it and be like, come on, you've used the phrase, this, that, and the third.
Predominantly, or something, yeah.
Yeah, this is
They
a
have some
testament
words,
to.
yeah.
If I read this is a testament to one more time out of AI copy, I'm going to puke. But people that do have the talent to put it together as writers are going to benefit from this huge where they could generate a block. Just like code, you can look at it, you're like, well, 80% of that's good, but let me put the magic on top of it to bring it over the line.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what we're going to see with some of this technology is people that are good at putting it together. Like the generalists are going to do pretty well, I think, with this kind of technology.
Hey, I'll be really honest. In my endeavor in graphic communications and being in school, I've gotten pretty good at Googling what I need to know, right? I don't know After Effects very well at all, but I know enough to say I need to know how to use chroma key with this particular video, and then I need to replace that whatever you removed with background or whatever, right? So that in a sense is a skill all in itself, knowing what you need to ask it, right? I guess is what I'm getting at. We're so Nate, you and I would not know what to ask AI to get the result that I wanted for a particular web page, but with the knowledge that you have, you do, right? You can just go into I need this.
So yeah, we're kind of getting into specialists. We're getting into, and I think it's super interesting because AI, maybe this is getting a little existential, but we're getting into this idea of what makes humans human, what makes us special. And these machines are holding up this mirror
People
of
hate that so much.
I really enjoy that topic of saying what makes us special at this point. And as these machines start to automate out these things, was it me special because I could type in all the stuff into a computer and I knew all the syntax and stuff? Well, that evaporated. But what's left at that point? What makes me special as a programmer? And the more AI comes out, the more we're melting down what the human condition's about. Yeah. And it's starting to come into creativity, experience, emotion, interpretation. I think that's kind of cool to see as like a species.
Well, I think that's also partially what scares people, and this is kind of a leap forward, but like, you see, we've been writing about this for years. Humans have, about the dystopian future, and this is where it starts.
Yeah.
Is you've got these programs and these robots that do these things, and they're so helpful, and then at some point in these stories that always takes a turn. I
mean, I can think of 2 movies based on this right now.
Yeah.
iRobot.
Yeah.
Terminator.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Okay, that's what I'm saying. We've been writing about this for so long, and this has been a fear, and yet we're still we're continuing. Again, I'm not saying that I believe this or that this is my fear, but it's like, despite the years of we've been talking about this and afraid of this and what if this happens, we're still moving in the same path that would ultimately take us there if something were to go wrong that.
So what's interesting, this is on the cutting edge of AI right now, but they are using AI to pilot fighter planes.
Yeah.
And they have trained it. And they have actually, in a simulator, fought AI. And humans lose every single time.
I'm not surprised.
Because it's doing shit that a human would not do. One of the things that it's doing is it's coming straight on, right?
Yeah.
And I was watching an interview about some pilots, and they were saying that the moves that it was doing, no human would think of doing.
Yeah.
Because it's so dangerous.
It's dangerous. I was gonna say that it saves a life, and for that reason, I'm for it.
Yeah.
If it saves lives, now I mean, war in general is a whole nother topic that I could say I have a lot of problems with.
Yeah.
But if we're saving lives, I get it. And I'm okay with that. And people might say, okay, well, I'm not of the opinion that that takes away jobs, because who's going to fly that? Well, you still need somebody to operate,
correct, maintain it,
and all those things. So, we're just moving. It's just moving parts. It's just instead of here, you're here now.
Well, getting onto saving lives, they're using it for pharmaceutical manufacturing.
Yeah.
Right, coming up with new drugs and stuff like that, and it's it's so fast, where it would take a person 100 hours to do to figure out this one thing. It's taking it 100 seconds, kind of thing. So
yeah.
That's one of the strengths of these large language models, is they're able to synthesize across several topics at one time. So take drug interactions, for example. If you're going to, take turmeric or something, you can ask these models, what do you know about turmeric and what does it interact with? And it can give you a list of this information pretty quickly. That's actually one of my favorite things to do with AI now, is these cross-disciplinary queries about types of information. For example, I at home have these jars full of all these random, I take ashwagandha and red reishi and lion's mane and all these powders and supplements and stuff that I order off of Amazon, and I'm well, do these things interact? And this thing's been pretty helpful for me to proof out what does and what doesn't. Whereas I could do that with Google, it just takes forever. But at the bottom it says consult your doctor.
But see, and that's the thing. And that's the thing, though.
But I don't.
It can't give you information that's not already out there, right?
That's an interesting question.
It can't know or learn anything that we don't already know.
Well,
I don't know, though. You get into this question of what is synthetic learning?
Yeah.
What's learning to begin with? What is learning something new?
Yeah.
Did we just read it out of a book and we know something new? What is the process of learning and creating something new?
Well, let's use the example of like you said, different medicines or supplements, whatever it is, and how do they interact and all that stuff. Somebody tested that to find that out, right? I'm genuinely asking.
Yeah, so I'm thinking it through.
That's where the AI program gets the information from.
The AI program is digesting the internet. And
exactly.
Everything that's out there, it's taking it, reading it, and then trying to make analysis of it. It's not necessarily saying oh, well, we're talking about large language models, first of all. Let's just keep it in that container. They're not running specific, let's research this molecule, essentially, and figure out where it can dock.
And it's not meaning-based, from my understanding, either. It's all predictive text as well.
Okay.
which is maybe less relevant to your example, but like if I ask it to write a poem, it's not, taking inspiration from nature as a person would.
Right.
It says, okay, you want a poem, and in my experience, it only knows how to do one rhyme scheme. If you ask for anything else, sorry, not happening. So it's not there yet. Poets, you're gonna be okay for a while.
So it can't even digest like a late '80s Billy Joel song.
And you could ask it to write in the Billy Joel's, style.
Yeah.
And it could take it as Billy Joel songs and then says, okay, he references pianos a lot, so I'm going to put a piano in this. But it's not because it understands what a piano is or how a piano sounds, right?
But I take like for example, like the song "Innocent Man." If you don't know it, like the rhyme scheme is not like A B A B.
It can't even do that. Most
right.
Of the time.
It's very like it's a little more intricate. So when it comes to things like that, again, like you're kind of lost without that human element.
I've read things like stories and the creative writing side that I'm like, this is good. It's clever. It's not wise. It's not impressing me in a way that the books upstairs in my library do at this point. So. Yeah.
Hence why I used it to write my report.
Oh, good Lord.
Because it was good enough.
The thing there is that's analytical writing, and I think in terms of where it's going to maybe come for people's jobs is going to be more of that technical, fact-based ABC outline type writing, right? I
agree.
And that's a legitimate concern for people, of course. But as far as the creative writing goes, like
no, it's not that.
It's
not going to win. No one's going to submit it for a Pulitzer anytime soon, or Nobel Prize is not going to win.
Yeah.
Nah, they wouldn't even get considered. Like, as soon as they find out it's AI, it'd be gone. There's a lot of take anime cons and stuff where they'll just flat out ban it. What do you guys think of that? It's like you go to an anime con, they're like, you can bring your stuff here, but if it's AI generated, out.
I think there should be at least like a disclaimer about it. If you're selling your art, and I'd rather support someone who put hours and pay that kind of price if I can afford it into art than someone who typed in.
Yes.
It's clever.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about this idea of almost call it like sweat equity in whatever you've produced. Where do you guys land on that when you're going to buy, let's say you're going to buy a piece of artwork and you're going to hang it on your wall and you're going to pay a few $100 for this. What are you thinking when you're looking at that art? You've got two pieces on the wall. Maybe they're identical. One was produced with the computer. Somebody hand painted the other one.
I'm going to go with the hand painted one every time.
Why is that?
The effort that was put into it by a human being. It just, means something more to me. Like, it's the same thing as like buying a handcrafted item over a highly reproduced manufactured item. I'm going to usually go with the handcrafted one every time.
I'm going to say it really depends on like what are we talking about here? Are we talking about like if you're using the example of like a painting, is it a print?
Two paintings. One, a machine just made it out of AI. It took its tiny robot hand and went and painted it in like 15 minutes.
Really?
The other one, someone it took like 3 days to hand paint it.
So they're actual paintings.
Yeah, actual paintings.
I think that's something you can see in the physicality of the actual piece of art. If you look at it, you can see the brushstrokes, you can see the attention to detail, you can see the time that was taken. But again, using art as an example,
I think that'd be easy to replicate with AI now. Because like you said, you got a robot hand painting it, and
possibly
it can do it in 15 minutes where like the hand painted what it took like
possibly
3 days.
Well, I'm fishing for opinions on like what is the value of the human process, like because I find a lot of examples of sometimes we don't care about the process at all. We just want the products. And other times we care deeply about the process.
Well, art's an interesting example because it's extremely subjective. I could look at a piece of art and feel very moved, and you could look at it and be like, that's a piece of junk, dude. I would never put that anywhere in my house. But because there was something in it that like spoke to me, I place a much higher value on it. Whether that's monetary or just sentimental or whatever it is, I'd say a better example, and what kind of made me think of this is, Rob, you're talking about like, you could mimic the human hand motion and things like that with AI and a robot. So let me put it to you this way: you're getting a massage, Now we've all sat in those massage chairs
I hate those.
with the thing that moves. You know what I'm saying? A person could use their hands to do the same thing. Why, with that human touch, does that feel so much better?
It's a very good point.
You
It's
know?
a very good point. And
Biological need, probably.
the human,
Yes.
the human aspects, because the machines creep me out. I don't like them. I sit at the gym and I'll put my, you know what? They're like, just try the massage machine. I put my 50 cents in it, massage your legs and stuff. I
Yeah.
couldn't get out of that quick enough. I feel like I was trapped and this robot was molesting
Right.
me.
You've got somebody, let's say, like, and especially let's put an emotional connection to it. Your wife comes, massages your legs. You know
That's
what I mean?
lovely.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? Exactly. There's something you just can't put a value on that emotional connection. You can't.
The machines don't have it, right?
No.
They just produce and that's it.
Absolutely.
You can get tattooed by a machine now.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
It's in Austin.
Yeah, why don't you explain that a little bit? Because that was kind of interesting.
So, from what I understand, and I may get some of it wrong, but they do pay like artists to design things for them. So there is some representation there. But you put your arm out, and some of the like sample ones, they strap you down for it. Like that's what you were mentioning with the massage. I don't know if that's how like they do with the, you know, it might have been the earlier versions, but they only do like black and gray, like micro realism designs, which for me right there is
Kind
a
of
whole problem in
defeats
of
the product.
itself.
Defeats the point.
Well, they don't age that well most of the time. But anyway, but yeah, like as
And they're
much,
tiny. It's like
as
what,
much
1
of
inch
an
by
like
1 inch?
introvert as I am, as much as I enjoy like being able to order things on my pizza online, like I would not go get tattooed by a robot.
Well,
Right?
again, it takes all of the emotion out of it. But and as you were saying that, I'm just sitting here thinking, and I want to shout out Transcendent Tattoo Collective in Arnold, Missouri, because that's where I go. My guy Jay Johnson's there, Jake Denoyer. They're great guys. Jay is, first of all, he does amazing color work. He's done all of my stuff, and he gets so fucking excited. Like when I brought up like this one here, when I said I want to do Kryptonite, him and I bond over comic book stuff and, you know, like superheroes and all that stuff. And he's super into that shit, just like I am. And he got fucking excited, man. Like, machine don't get excited about putting that on you. It's just like, what you want, boom, there you go.
Yeah.
This dude is like, I've never done that before. I want to do that. I'm stoked about it. And, you know, he's thinking about the colors he wants to put in it and how he wants to make it look, you know. And it's just, that connection is gone when you do something like what you were just talking about.
And you have a unique piece too, even if someone goes on the internet and copies it, which is another problem out there. You know?
That happens.
But
there's
yeah,
artists that
it's
do
yours,
that too.
and it's probably going to look better than
Yeah.
the people who copied it anyway.
There's artists I know artists that'll do that. They'll look at something and you know, you can look at something for inspiration. You can even look at something and take that image, but they put their own spin on it. They put their own colors in it. They make it their own, and it's still something that they're proud of.
Mm-hmm. It's totally different from tattoo copying.
Yeah.
So I'm beginning to wonder if we're starting to hit the limit on our disconnection with manufacturing, because for a long time you can get stuff at like Dollar Tree for $1, and it comes from whoever knows in China. They made 7,000 of these bottles and they made it here, and that's been fine for a long time. And our food comes in cereal boxes, and we don't give a shit where that was produced, and it falls out of a machine and we eat it, and that's fine. But now with AI producing like human level stuff, maybe we're starting to look at this thing like, where are our products coming from? And do we care if there's an emotional connection to them or not? Art seems to be one of the most charged ones as far as like, do we care about the human connection or not? Yeah. But I'm wondering if that's going to have a trickle back effect. Like AI may cause this whiplash effect of like, now that we're surrounded by a perfect copy that falls out of these machines and our perfect emails with our perfect graphics, is it going to take like a human connection for us to be like, to get our attention anymore? Like unless someone's looking me in the eyes, I'll be like, that's robot pitch that's just coming out of all these things. Do you think this will maybe cause like a consciousness kind of reevaluation?
I mean, I think Marx talked about that with like the idea of the alienation of labor from people. So like back in the day, if you bought a basket, it was hand woven by someone, and that person got not only the value that you paid for the basket, but like the satisfaction of creating this thing and providing it to someone else. So, and now you're at the point where, it comes out of a factory or whatever.
You kind of summed up why we kind of do this podcast in a way, because
Communists? Is that why?
Well, no, no.
Oh boy.
But
leave it.
producing something to put out there, right? We're putting our opinions out there. We're creating something from nothing, and having somebody digest it, take it in, and enjoy it. We do it because we like to do it, but I also do it because I hope people enjoy our content. Does that make sense?
Communism was just a red herring.
Well, I think podcast is interesting to me because to me it's mostly personality. Like you show up, so you want to hear about Matt, you want to hear from Rob, Tori, maybe even myself occasionally, because of who we are and our perspective. You could get facts off the internet, but you can't get our perspective anywhere else.
No.
I also think too that I think we're going to get into a spot where it's like we're so used to everything being so mass produced and AI is doing this and doing that we are going to start paying extra for these hand-painted works, these handwritten work, verified original art pieces, because they're going to start becoming more rare.
It
right?
could be a whole whiplash effect. It would actually be pretty interesting if artists started, because here's a slight rant on the other side of it. As someone who's produced a lot of art with no artificial intelligence for a long time, and now I got my hands on artificial intelligence, it takes a long time to produce artwork.
Yeah.
And some of it is not appreciated.
Yeah.
And some of it just goes into, the void and the ether, and hopefully you get a good experience out of it because no one else gives a shit. So AI actually speeds up the process to figure out if someone's going to give a shit or not sometimes with the concept work, which is kind of interesting. Because I found sometimes, take making video games, for example. That is a tremendous amount of effort. And the people who play it sometimes, they might try it for 5 minutes and that was it.
Yeah.
And it's on the artist at that point to absorb all the effort, all the cost, and all the time to make something for people. And that's ultimately not appreciated. So to hit the acceleration on some of those cycles, I think, is actually kind of nice. But the flip side of it then becomes, a machine made this, so this is probably crap. If we get back to the point where if this causes a traditional artist to be more appreciated and actually their work is someone stops to take the time to appreciate they made this by hand, that could be a good outcome.
Yeah.
So Tori, we haven't really gotten into detail about what you do, so
I think we got derailed by the dick pic thing,
the dick pic. So why don't you explain in a little more detail on what you're doing?
So what I'm doing currently, I've actually got to the point where I'm rating other people's work. So if it's good, bad, okay. And
but
so
before
that's
that, when you started.
Well, but that's the quality standard part coming in, right? So you have multiple people looking at something, and when you have that, there's less case of biases and things coming into play. But so a lot of what I do is there's an image and then helping the AI describe that image, but analyze that image, and it's in many different ways. So sometimes it's running it through the bots and seeing what they say. So you might have two of them, and then you rate which one is better and why, and then you take that response and then you edit it to make it even better. Or you might just suggest edits. Maybe you don't edit it yourself, but you suggest it. One of the kind of interesting ones, which I don't work on as much, but it's like a in-between step. So they'll give an original prompt for an image. I don't work in at all on how to generate the images or anything like that. But I'll give a prompt for an image. Say, I want to see a CEO, right, of a company. Give me an image of a CEO. And so what the AI does then is it generates kind of prompts in between that of different iterations of it. So it'll be the CEO in his office behind his desk with his, portrait on the wall or something, or a CEO in a board meeting with all these people. But the goal is to look at the images, make sure it matches the original prompt, but also that it's introducing an appropriate amount of diversity into it. So it's not all, no offense, white male CEOs, right? But if you ask for an NFL player, then it should give you all male NFL players, just because that's the accurate portrayal at this point.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So-
Okay,
That's
yeah.
interesting. Is programming diversity into a system an artificial introduction to a system? Because I wonder about that sometimes.
I think sometimes it's just I mean, or a correction of stereotypes in this case. I think a representation or reflection, because, I mean, like right now, if you asked it to generate a president of the United States, technically they would all be dudes,
Yeah.
right? But if you asked it a future president of the United States, you'd hope to see some women in there, maybe,
Yeah.
you know, or you're allowed, obviously, if the person who's prompting asks for it. If they ask for a female NFL player, then cool, we can do that, you know, too. But
And not a hot one. Hot NFL if female hunter player. Like, average-looking woman NFL player. What does that look like?
Why she gotta be average?
Why? Yeah. Why can't she be
It's
hot?
your imagination. Let it run wild.
Yeah, I'm just
I want her
saying.
to be hot.
I do too, but what I'm saying is like, it. You know, give me a female NFL player, and it's going to be like...
Okay,
blonde
but
and-
you
I
know,
think I see what you're saying. It's gonna go for like the stereotype of
Yeah.
what looks beautiful. So
that's
and
what,
funny.
according to society.
I just saw an ad for, I think it was Dove.
Oh.
Did a thing that's like they're like, you know, the future of advertising is AI, but like we promise not to use AI. We're always going to use like actual models and stuff like that. But they also did like the commercial itself was somebody typing in like, show me the most beautiful woman in the world, or show me a beautiful woman, or whatever it is. And then it was like, show me a beautiful woman by Dove standards. And it was all these like average like women. They were still beautiful, but they weren't like, they didn't look airbrushed. They looked like, you know, all the women you see just walking down the street or walking through a store or something like that. So,
Yeah, it's a tricky one. That falls under the category of art for me. It's highly interpretive what
Yeah.
beauty is, and
exactly.
you know, spit out a standard is a little assumption.
Yep.
and sometimes they'll have a little statement about that, like whatever it is subjective. Too. They'll throw that in there.
It's a good idea to mix it up that way. That is interesting. The idea, and that is I guess a bigger topic moving forward too, is this idea of these AI systems becoming like a standard imposer of like, this is now what we turn to for answers. Like, AI said this, so that is how we operate. That's actually a slippery slope I see with this whole thing of being like, if we put too much trust in these systems to be like the end all be all of intelligence, and they're programmed. These are programmed systems. Somebody makes these things. They feed them information, and so somebody's perspective is baked into them. And I got to keep that in mind too.
I think that's kind of where Tori kind of comes in what you're doing, right? Because yeah, you're right, but if you've got some kind of moderation on it, saying this is wrong, that's right, this is really good, that's really bad, eventually we could get to a point where AI is accurate and you can kind of take it on face value, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Well.
some things are always going to be subjective, but I would
No.
kind of compare it to Wikipedia. Like, Wikipedia is a good source in general if you need to find some information quick.
Right.
But if you're writing your dissertation
on it, you got to go for that source material,
and
the resources.
the real source, the best sources of Wikipedia are the sources that
That are
they
listed
got
at the
it
bottom.
from.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
double check those, and yeah, it just goes back to knowing how to check your sources and determine whether your information is valid or not.
I feel like that's going to be a very valuable skill. It's
That's
already
the
valuable,
skill
but
schools need to teach.
yeah,
The
cross-reference.
critical thinking and
That's huge. Yep, absolutely.
Well, before we get going, I'm going to propose this question to both Nate and Tori. Nate,
Sorry, Matt.
where do you see, well, it's only because they're more in the field right now. Where do you see AI in the next 10 years?
Jesus. You want to go first on this one,
Oh,
Tor?
you can go.
Next 10 years. Okay. Black box, essentially. Like, okay, the people making it right now don't even know what's going to happen the next 6 months.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So for me to predict is going to be I'll say that the systems we have for large language models will continue to get better and better, because the stuff I'm using, like, I pay for GPT-4 subscription $20 a month, and it's substantially better than like 3.5. Like, especially with hallucination and stuff, that's pretty much, it doesn't happen that much, at least in the topics I'm using. So I picture these systems are going to get even better, as far as general intelligence goes, I think that's what we're working towards, is this AGI vision of like a unified intelligence. And the second thing I'll just say quickly is that the amount of compute and brain power you can put into a tiny device has gone through the roof. And so we're going to see more of that, where you can have a tiny piece of hardware have super intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's going to play out into the next 10 years. So what I got.
Tori, what
do
are
you
your
think, Tor?
thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, technology in however past 100 years is like exponential growth. So
Yeah.
who knows? But hopefully we don't wait too long to figure out like the benefits and pitfalls of it, and what needs to be regulated, and what's a matter of free speech. Like it's going to be contentious and complicated
Yeah.
issue, right? And I don't have an answer for that at this point. But I mean, hopefully it will be a valuable tool, and they'll figure out a way to continue to improve it ethically without plagiarizing and stealing a bunch of things that they shouldn't. And,
Yeah.
and this is my cat, everyone. Those of you who are watching at home. Her name is Ophelia.
This is the first time she's ever been on an
It's 'cause
episode.
I'm
Yeah.
here.
She's
Because you're
followed
down
Tor
here.
down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will say this. I think it's kind of scary to think the capabilities of AI right now for the average person are so dumbed down to what is actually available, right? Like it's not even ChatGPT 4 is what you were saying. That's not even.
I mean, this is public sector.
Yeah, what's out there in the private
sector, my goodness.
Like, what is going on right now that we don't know about?
Yeah.
That's what's kind of scary for me. And I will say that it is going to revolutionize our lives, like television and internet and all that, in the sense that it brings out the best in people and it brings out the worst in people. I just hope that it brings more of the best of us than anything.
The political stuff is probably what scares me the most.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not worried about it, taking over our lives and forcing us to listen to tech.
I'll be
or
honest with you.
something.
Trump's
Like,
biggest defense could be like, I didn't say this. AI generated it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But we all know that ain't true.
Yeah.
And that goes back to like the critical thinking, being able to analyze information. When
Yeah.
people are caught in these echo chambers and just believe what they see,
Yeah.
it's bad. So
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna get going before Fifi has a fucking conniption on us and starts destroying my studio for lack of attention. So
where are we leaving it? Slightly scared, mostly optimistic.
yes, I would agree with that. Yeah, slightly fearful, but overall,
Yeah.
optimistic.
That's how I would sum it up.
And one of the reasons why is because we have someone like Tori,
Yeah.
who is probably the most moralistic person that I know in my life.
Yeah.
well, thank you.
You know, I tell a story.
Yeah.
Her and I had just moved in together. We were living in an apartment right there at Baumgartner and
Yep.
Telegraph. Okay,
Yep.
and we went to that Schnucks right there,
Yeah.
and we went through like a self checkout line, right? And I'm like looking down. I'm getting ready to pay, and I'm like, oh, there's $5 here. Sweet.
Yeah.
I got $5. Like, in there. Tori looks at me and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what are you talking about? I just found $5. She's like, that don't belong to you.
Yeah.
I'm like, so? She's like, you're going to turn that in, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not. And she's like, no, you're going to turn it in because it doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
And I did. And it fucking irked me. It like perturbed me a little bit. But then I
Yeah.
started thinking about it.
Yeah.
What if that person's $5? What if that was like gas for they pick up their kid from daycare one time or
Yeah.
something, and they came back and like, or they're struggling,
Yeah.
and that $5 makes all the world a difference to them, and they come back and like, sorry, $5 is gone.
Yeah.
Somebody took it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah, so I think we're gonna end it on AI as slightly fearful, but overall
Slightly fearful, mostly
overall
optimistic. I would add for myself, generally uninvolved, but that's just me personally.
I don't use it.
Yeah.
outside
She doesn't
of
use it at
work.
all. At all. She's working, and one of my favorite things is to get on Midjourney and just fuck around with like image generation, right? I love it.
fun.
It's so fun. You know,
Hey, don't need that.
your imagination is sky's the limit on what you can ask it to do.
Yeah.
And the same with music on Suno. You know, so but yeah, I'm pretty excited to see where it goes, and well,
Hell yeah.
we'll end it there. So
Tori, thank you.
yeah, thank
You're
you
welcome.
for
Thank you.
coming in.
Thank
It was
you so
actually
much.
really
I
good.
just came down from upstairs because I live
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Hey.
and then Fifi,
Brought my cat.
Yep. Absolutely.
she woke up and was like, "Where's mom?"
All right.
All right, guys. Well, stay tuned for season 9 next week, and then we've got our season finale coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
After that, and then we're going to take a little sabbatical.
Yep.
I guess now would be a good time to mention that we've got Pay for Blood coming up on the channel. It's going to be kind of like the same format, but we're going to be talking strictly action movies.
Yep.
And we've got Matt's good friend Casey coming in to join us on that. And we're going to be starting that probably a couple of weeks after this episode airs. So
It's going to be a good time.
yeah, so stay tuned for that.
Tupac lives. Greg's not here, so whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop.